Nasruddin Imavov just knocked out Israel Adesanya in the main event at UFC Saudi Arabia. That's Izzy's third loss in a row, and it certainly put a stop to his ride back to the title. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to recap the entire UFC Saudi Arabia fight card. Before we talk about the fights, let's talk about the bets. Overall, it was a decent night. And before some of you cry and say, Ange, because that's how you talk, how come you're showing all the bets this week and last week you only showed yours? Well, last week, I recorded this video at 2 o'clock in the morning. This week, I get to record it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which means I got to watch the fights right here in this chair and keep up with all of the information. So it's very easy for me to keep up with it. Get it going. Copy, paste. Update the bets as they go. Screenshot, throw it in here, and record this video. And overall, it was a decent night. I went 8-3 on picks. BetSam also went 8-3 on picks. BetSam had a great betting night as well. If you don't know who BetSam is, he's the latest addition. You've seen him on the premium membership for a little while now. All his picks are on the picks chart. All his bets are on the official bets page. And then he joined me for Tuesday's breakdown. And speaking of Tuesday's breakdown, you'll notice that Jacob wasn't there. And that's because Jakey Boy wasn't really feeling up to doing this. He was just kind of feeling things a little bit, took a little bit of a break. Some of that may have had to do with you people. Kid loses a few lock of the weeks in a row and you're relentless. You let him have it. You're like rabid dogs, piranhas in the water. Well, his lock of the week won. It was Michael Venom Page. He hit him at plus 150. I expect that same energy you brought him the last couple of weeks to come back at him, but positively. If 80% of you attack him when the lock of the week loses, I expect 80% of you to praise him when it wins. Jakey Boy's lock of the week did hit. Interestingly enough, he has never missed 5 in a row. He's hit a 4-fight losing skid. He's never hit 5. The safest bet in the history of bets might literally be betting on the lock of the week after 4 losses. But either way, overall, today was a decent day. Up money overall for premium, 18% ROI, 3.66 net units on a card that had a bunch of dogs winning. If you do want to unlock all the picks, the bets, the tools, and everything else, it's only $10 for an entire month. And that will include the safety parlay. The safety parlay also hit for UFC Saudi Arabia. Parlay is a little bit of a loose term because it was originally Jasmine Jasudavicius, and then we had Ikram Elaskirov. Ikram obviously dropped, and by the time he dropped, I was in a position where I either grabbed somebody else and put together a whole new parlay, or we just let it ride the way it was designed to be. And that's ultimately what I decided to do, because what I did was look at all the bets I already had. I already was exposed to Shamil. I was already exposed to Mike Davis. I already had money on Muin. I was in a situation where I had money or on Naimov. I was in a situation where I had money on everybody who I thought was going to win, and I didn't want to double expose. And thank God I didn't, because I might have gone with Mike Davis. Safety parlay hit 11 of the last 13, up almost 7 units just from that one single bet, a 54% ROI from that one single bet. If you do want to unlock the safety parlay, the picks, the bets, the tools, and everything else that we do, they're available right now. Just go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. You'll unlock everything you need for an entire month for $10. That month looks like this. We got UFC 312 next week. We got 3 other fight nights, and they are leaving the Apex. I believe UFC Seattle is in the mix. Unlock everything you want or need, including the brand new fight simulator. We literally developed a tool that simulates fights. It runs these fights through the algorithm 100,000 times, tells you who's going to win those fights based off the simulations using everything from the actual implied probability to their biometrics to their UFC stats. It runs those fights, it does the algorithm, it spits out the results from 100,000 simulations, and you can then use that to bet. You can use that to build DraftKings lineups and do all the things, the fight simulator, the picks, the bets, the tools, safety parlay, all of it. It's freaking $10. $10. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. Let's talk about the actual fights. Right off the rip, I got weird vibes on this fight card. I picked Hamdy. So did Sam. Sam bet on him. Sam was way too exposed to Hamdy, but it hit. Ultimately, I said, well, Hamdy is an Olympic wrestler. I think he can get it done. Jamal Pogues doesn't know what really to do off his back. That's not really what we got. In the first round, we kind of got that, right? Hamdy came forward, landed clean, did an inside trip, tripped Jamal Pogues to the ground, controlled the rest of that round. That round was a pretty clear Hamdy round. The next 2 rounds, I also thought Hamdy won. I thought Hamdy won this fight. I thought this scorecard was pretty good, or at least the result. The one judge that gave all 3 rounds to Jamal Pogues, that's what was crazy to me. 3 rounds to Jamal. How does he win the first round? I'd love to hear somebody explain that. Jakey Boy and I were texting. He disagreed with this decision. He thought Jamal won the fight. And fine, you want to say that Jamal won, I get it. It was a close enough fight. But to say, and Jacob didn't say this, the judge did, that Jamal won all 3 rounds, that's nuts. He did not win all 3. The first round was so clear. And I thought Hamdy won the next 2 rounds with literally just doing bigger things, throwing bigger punches, bombing away, and he was breathing heavy. This was a sloppy mess. But why I said this gave me weird vibes is the commentating team was insisting that Jamal won this fight. The commentating team was positive that Jamal won this fight. And I think that's absurd. I do not think Jamal won this fight. I thought Hamdy won the fight. And even if you thought it was close, then fine, it was close. But for them to be like, well, that's crazy. How is that crazy? And then I started to get nervous, like, oh, are we going to end up in a weird situation where all the underdogs I picked were people against locals? Are the judges going to screw me? But that's not how it went. I agreed with every single decision on this fight card. Hamdy got it done. He basically apologized for his performance. He kind of looked like shit, but it was a 2-year layoff, steroid-free. I guess we'll find out. And he apologized, but honestly, last thing on this before I move on, the commentating team was also saying Hamdy's going to look back at this and he's going to be pissing himself for not being busy. Jamal is going to be pissing himself for not being busy. He's the high-volume striker who didn't put out high volume. And he was getting tagged with giant looping overhands. That's on Jamal, not Hamdy. Then we had Bogdan Grad. Bogdan Grad lost this first round. Lucas Alexander was looking good. Lucas Alexander was winning the grappling exchanges in the first round. Bogdan came out with a wrestle-heavy game plan, and my initial notes were, Bogdan's not as good of a grappler as he thinks he is. Lucas Alexander was able to reverse positions. Lucas Alexander was able to end up on top, and Lucas Alexander won that first round. And then the second round came, and Bogdan is not a quitter. This guy does not quit on himself. He does not give up. He will continue to grind forward no matter what. And he does a phenomenal job just erasing what happened in the previous round. Because the second round came, he was able to get this fight to the ground, and then he just worked from there. And ultimately, it looked like Lucas quit. You can see in this picture, he turned his head, he covered, and that's it. That's a telltale like, hey, ref, just stop this, please, so I don't have to tap out. Just stop this. And that's what we got here. So Bogdan Grad looked good. I will say, there's only so many fights you can win after losing the first round, right? You can't just afford to give up a round every fight because this isn't new to Bogdan. This is not the first fight that Bogdan was losing and then just dogged his way to a win. So we do need to be careful going forward. If he fights somebody else who is just as much of a dog as him, he's not going to be able to break them the way that he just broke Lucas Alexander. Bogdan's skills are good, but he was not the more skilled fighter here. I felt like Lucas was the more skilled fighter, the faster, more athletic fighter. Lucas seemed to have more grappling skills as well. But again, Bogdan is just such a dog that he broke Lucas and was able to make it happen. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. Don't just 4 months from now forget that Bogdan got pieced up in the first round, was losing some of those exchanges. We need to keep that in mind, especially when we're looking at his next fight, his next opponent, if he's fighting somebody that's gritty and tough. Then we have my girl Jazzy, effectively the safety parlay. And the reason this caption here says, thank you, comments, that's me thanking you. Because when I originally broke down this card, I've broken this card down 3 times in the last 3 months. 4 times if you include the Tuesday stream. And I picked Jasmine every single time. I didn't waver from picking her, but what I did do is get more confident as time went on. In the beginning, I was like, I think Jasmine wins this fight, but Mayra Bueno Silva's good, and you can't look at her recent streak and count her out. She just fought for a title. She was winning her last fight, and there was a cut. She did beat Holly Holm, and I wasn't as confident as Jasmine as you were. And then you, in the comment section, were overwhelmingly on the Jasmine side. You said, Ange, Mayra Bueno Silva's a quitter with no cardio. Ange, Jasmine's got this. And I'm assuming that is some of your influence got in my head because as every week went on and the more and more I broke this down, the more and more confident I got in Jasmine. And that's what we got. We got a Jasmine that came forward, dealt with a couple of Hail Mary submissions, and just broke Mayra Bueno Silva. She broke Mayra Bueno Silva. I mean, Mayra Bueno Silva, outside of a couple of Hail Mary submission attempts, was broken. Jasmine just beat her down, broke her, and that was it. And Jasmine's the exact type of person that can do really well in this division because anytime you get somebody with her I don't give an F attitude and her ability to get a fight to the ground and her ability to grind, and she's not soft, she'll take a shot and keep coming forward. Anytime you get that combination in the women's division, you're going to have quite a bit of success. Jasmine Jasudavicius, I believe, on a 5-fight win streak now, looking absolutely fantastic. We'll see what her next matchup is, but she's quietly becoming somebody that you have to seriously consider how far she can go in this sport. She starts to clean up the hands a little bit. We know she's got very good wrestling. All of a sudden, Jasmine Jasudavicius is beating a lot of people. Mayra Silva fought for a title and just got beat worse in this fight than she did in her title fight loss. Think about that. Jasmine Jasudavicius just beat Mayra Silva down worse than Raquel Pennington did over 5 rounds. Says something about who Jasmine is and what she could be in this sport. And then we had Terrance McKinney doing Terrance McKinney things. I did not put him in the safety parlay because I was worried. He's freaking Terrance McKinney. And honestly, there was a flash of Terrance McKinney when he got taken down. He never should have been taken down, but it didn't matter. He immediately swept, got on top, worked from there. The best part about this Terrance McKinney win, this is when I knew it was going to be a good day. I just hit my safety parlay. Jakey Boy's sort of been down on himself a little behind the scenes, MIA, kind of, outside of us hanging out last Saturday. And his bets started to win. And one of the bets he had was a prop bet for Terrance McKinney to win by KO, TKO, and he got that at very good plus money. And when Terrance McKinney had Damir Hadzovic's back and didn't go for the choke, which would have been the easier path, and decided to work to a TKO instead, which required multiple position resets, he really had to go in on that TKO. He 100% could have submitted Damir easier than TKOing him. And Jacob had the TKO bet, and I was like, man, look at this luck. Look at this luck. And that's not what happened. Terrance stuck with it, stayed on top, ultimately got the TKO. And as soon as Jacob hit that bet, and I had just hit the safety parlay, I was like, this is going to be a good day. The MMA gods are shining down. You can't have flowers without rain. At least that's what Jacob tells me. Terrance McKinney did what he does, and he looked good doing it. The problem with any Terrance McKinney fight is they are so fast. And he always looks so good early. You have no idea if there's any growth. I have no clue if Terrance McKinney is better now than he was in his last fight because we didn't see enough. We didn't see enough. He's sparking people in 2 minutes or getting beat. Like, I have no idea if he's improving or not. What we do know is anytime Terrance McKinney fights somebody that can be finished, he may finish him. He ended up being a minus 800 favorite, and of course he looked like it in this fight. But you can't just ignore the past when you have somebody like Terrance. But Terrance looked absolutely spectacular. Here's a beautiful shot of that tattoo on his back. That's a pretty cool tattoo for T-Rex, and it is just a T-Rex face, but good for him. Looked great doing it. Hopefully he gets himself a nice bonus because he is fun. He is a guy that you need on the roster. And as far as us, the gamblers and the bettors, we just need to look at the matchup and see if it's somebody that he can finish. I mean, Damir's a 40-year-old. And somebody in the comments were like, hey, why didn't you put Terrance in the safety parlay? He's fighting Damir. Guys, the memory on you. What happened last week when Peyton Talbot lost to a 40-year-old? A 40-year-old. And then it was like, well, okay, but Hani's better than Damir. Okay, sure. And Peyton's better than Terrance. Nothing's a guarantee in this sport. That's why I personally, when it comes to the safety parlay, that word safe means more to me than you'll ever know. You have no idea what it does to me emotionally. I didn't even watch, we're not even talking about the Jasmine fight right now. I didn't even watch the Jasmine fight because I was a nervous. I got up and I was like a 1940s housewife. I was doing dishes. I was doing laundry. I couldn't watch it. And then after I saw that she won, then I went back and I rewound it and watched it. So that's why Terrance wasn't in the safety parlay. I can't trust the guy, but he did look good here. I'm glad he got the win. I hope he gets a bonus. Then we had this gorgeous man that a lot of us rode to the promised land. He's not as bad looking as people think. And I love this guy. Look at this guy. I love him. I love him. He looked great in this fight. He looked really good in this fight. He does fight like he fights. He's very lumbering. He's just like blah, 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 blah. And the tits are jiggling, the stomach's jiggling a little bit. And he's just lumbering around. But he is surprisingly fast. You know what he's like? Have you guys seen that clip of the fat dude with no shirt on rollerblades? And he had his hands in his pockets and he like goes up on the skate ramp and does a flip and lands and just, and he's like, that's peak male performance. That's what Shamil sort of looks like physically. But he's fast. He's sneaky fast. He's sneaky athletic. He can work in spinning attacks. He can do a lot of things that you would never expect a man that looks like this to do. And he looked good in this fight. Thomas Petersen got a takedown early, and I was like, shit. Here we go. Shamil's fat ass isn't going to be able to get up. But that's not what happened. He did get up. And he kept stalking forward. His hands are way lower than you'd like him to be, but his hands are low. He's moving forward. And ultimately, he knocked Thomas Petersen out with a straight right that went right down the pipe, cracked that dude in the mouth. Thomas Petersen fell down before the referee called it. He just pulled his own mouthpiece out and laid there. Like, yeah, I'm done. I'm cooked. So, I mean, that's a bad look for Thomas Petersen. If you get knocked out, you get knocked out. I mean, that's what happens. This is the sport. But to just get dropped like that and be like, I'm done. You might as well have submitted. Either way, Shamil looked great. He is great person, great looking, great guy. Thank you for the slips. Then we had Muhammad Naimov, and there was a little bit of nutshot karma here. I broke down Muhammad Naimov a few weeks in a row, and I did the same thing with him that I did with Jasmine. Every week that went on, every fight I broke down again, I got a little more confident Muhammad. But he did get a little bit of karma because my hesitation with him is he didn't really have a clean win in the UFC. He was losing to that little ginger that looks like Jacob before knocking him out. Then he beat that other little turd, but he was kicking him in the nuts and he was grabbing the fence and he was doing all sorts of fouls. And then he beat Eric Silva, but Eric Silva's like leg snapped in half as a fluke. So I was like, we really haven't seen Muhammad Naimov win a fight clean yet. But he won this one clean. He did get kicked in the dick a few times, and that's probably karma he has coming from when he beat the little baby boy there. But ultimately, this was an interesting fight. It was boring, and it's kind of both of their fault. Kaan Ofli was just like trying to hold Muhammad against the cage because he couldn't really take him down. Muhammad was the better fighter, it seemed to me. He had the better striking. The takedown defense was solid overall. He was winning some of the grappling exchanges, some of the scrambles, and that's how he won this fight. It was not an exciting fight, but I do blame Kaan Ofli because he's the one who was just holding Naimov against the cage instead of shooting real takedowns. I get it. You want to get it to the ground to win. You need to get it to the ground to win. I get it. Everybody's got their own strategy. But get it to the ground like a man. Don't hold him against the cage. Either way, Muhammad Naimov got it done. Looked good doing it. I cashed my bet on him. I'm happy to do so. Thank you, Muhammad. I was actually going to parlay. I talked about this on the Tuesday live stream. I was going to parlay Muhammad Naimov and Terrance McKinney. And for some reason, Bet Online is the book we use. It was locked. And I don't know if they locked Muhammad or if they locked Terrance, but they wouldn't let me bet that. So I didn't. Then when I went back to do it the next day, Terrance McKinney was like minus 750. I was like, I'm not doing it now. So could have made a little more money, but ultimately it is what it is. Made some money on him. Glad he got that done. Speaking of absolute jiu-jitsu nerd weirdo pussies that you can't do their jobs for them, we have Mike Davis. And that was harsh, and Mike Davis is a very talented guy, spectacular fighter in every fight that isn't this one. Because what we got in this fight, and I'll give Ziam his credit in a second. Can I just railroad the other dude first, please? You French crybabies. Mike Davis is a gentleman who had 14 takedowns in his previous 4 fights. 14. 4 takedowns in his previous 4 fights. He had 6 takedowns just a couple of fights ago in one fight. He's a guy that comes forward, aggressively wrestles. He has good hands, power, all those things. And he's good at jiu-jitsu. Now, ultimately, he keeps getting injured. It's just problem after problem. My arm this, my whatever. And he ends up with a year off, 2 years off, whatever it is. But then he comes back and he looks good. He did not look good in this fight. This guy pulled guard twice in 90 seconds. Shot a takedown. As soon as he hit Ziam's hips, he just pulled guard. It was one of the most pathetic displays I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not exaggerating. That was one of the saddest, most frustrating, most pathetic things I've ever seen. Mike Davis is at a good gym. Mike Davis is well trained. Mike Davis has great training partners. I can promise you, and correct me if I'm wrong and you're in the Mike Davis camp, at no point during fight week, the week before that, or that whole 6-week window when you're preparing for this, did they run drills where they said, lower your level, shoot a double, and then when you hit your hips, fall to your back and pull them on you. That was not in the game plan. So I don't know if Mike Davis had a secret injury he wasn't telling anybody about, and maybe he does. Because here's a little inside information for you people, not about Mike specifically, but in general, I managed professional fighters for a very long time. You don't get health insurance, right? UFC doesn't pay them health insurance. Bellator didn't pay people health insurance. PFL doesn't give people health insurance. You don't have health insurance. But if you get injured during the fight, that is covered by the promotion's health insurance. And I'm not saying this is what happened, but I am saying Mike Davis did not look like Mike Davis. So something was up. He either wasn't there mentally or something physically was. Like, he didn't look like himself. Maybe he was hurt, and instead of pulling out because he hasn't fought in a year and a half and he needs to make money, he just dealt with it, knowing full well that when he leaves the octagon, you literally sit with a doctor and you fill out a form. You write all the stuff that this hurts, that hurts, whatever, so it's covered. So maybe he had some sort of injury that would prevent him from shooting real takedowns like a man, and he went to the fight anyway so that he could fill out the form, and whatever that injury was would get covered by insurance. This is a leap. I'm connecting dots that aren't even there. I'm just trying to make sense of how somebody as talented as he is, somebody who has proven he can wrestle, is pulling guard the very first move of the fight. I could understand if he's pulling guard round 3, right? He's not having success getting takedowns, but he needs to get it to the ground because that's where he's the better fighter. Okay, fine. But for your literal first move to be pulling guard is nuts. And then for your second move to be pulling guard is something's up. Something's up. And I can't even say he bet against himself because the line was going the other way. The line going the other way was interesting. So Ziam got the win. That's 2 wins in a row. He did it pretty well. It might be more than 2 in a row, but 2 in a row right off the top of my head. He did it pretty well. His takedown defense looked good. The striking was okay. He was not the better fighter on the ground, though. Mike Davis's jiu-jitsu, he had Ziam in a calf slicer that looked like his knee was going to explode, and Firas just dealt with it. Didn't look panicked, wasn't wincing. I don't know how his knee was facing that direction without any actual injury, but it was, and he was fine. So now Ziam sneakily winning a couple of these fights. If you know anything about what the fuck was going on in Mike Davis's head, let me know. Then we had an underdog win for Big Angie Boomba Lutz. Vinicius Oliveira beat Said Nurmagomedov, and I said he would, and Jacob said he would. I placed a bet on Vinicius Oliveira. I bet him to win inside the distance decision, no action, because in my mind, he was the more dangerous of the two. And opening up this fight, I was a little nervous. Because Said Nurmagomedov was landing clean early, chopping Vinicius's legs early, and I was like, ah, shit. Uh-oh. Ultimately, Vinicius took over. He's a dog. Both of these gentlemen lived up to their names. Vinicius lived up to his nickname, which was Lock Dog. He fought like a dog. He certainly lost that first round, came back in the second, stayed tough, moving forward. That guy was exhausted. He had a broken rib and was just bombing away, spinning, jumping, doing literally anything he can to win a fight. This is how you're supposed to be. If your job is to win fist fights, you need to have the heart and the grit and the determination that Vinicius Oliveira has. That's what you need. If you took his heart and you put it inside of Mike Davis's talent, you'd have a phenomenal fighter. Instead, you got one guy pulling guard and you have another guy with a broken rib biting down, bombing away. Vinicius Oliveira looked absolutely spectacular. And Said Nurmagomedov lived up to his last name because he was shooting takedowns. Things were not going the way he thought they would in his feet, so he was shooting takedowns. And he got a few, he lost a few. Vinicius has proven, he proved it in his last fight against Ricky Simone. He proved it in this fight. He is never going to give up. You could be 90% of his hips, have his ass on the mat, and he's still not going to give you that takedown. He's going to scramble. He's going to work. Vinicius Oliveira, phenomenal underdog. Glad I picked him. Wish I bet him. I texted Jacob during these fights and I said, I need to start doing plus 3.5 bets on all my underdogs. I picked a lot of underdogs on this card. And most of them won. And the ones who didn't win, I could have hit some money with a plus 3.5. And then he said, you say this all the time. And he's not wrong. I'm a coward. And when my mouse is hovering over and you're about to spend actual money, that's when you're like, then you convince yourself anything can happen. But I'm glad Vinicius Oliveira won. I should have bet the plus 3.5. I didn't, but hopefully you did because this was going to pick on the books for about 3 weeks. Then we had an absolute heavyweight snooze fest, and I can't blame either one of these guys. First of all, Jairzinho Rozenstruik is essentially this guy. He's a counter striker. And I know they piece together highlights of him knocking people out, but that's because he's a counter striker and they come rushing in and he catches them. What you're not going to see is highlights of him moving forward at relentless pace. And what made this fight particularly slow is that Sergey Pavlovich was patient as well. He was taking his time. He wasn't running forward, overcommitting. He wasn't headhunting. And without Pavlovich's just insane forward pressure and trying to find and chase that knockout, Jairzinho didn't get the opportunity to do the full-blown counter-striking. Sergey Pavlovich won this fight. Ultimately, he hit harder, he was faster, and he threw more. That's what it was. That's literally what it was. There was a few times where it looked like Jairzinho was dropped, but slow motion replays showed he was basically just tripping over Sergey Pavlovich's feet. This fight wasn't particularly exciting. Doesn't do a ton for the division because Sergey's back in the win column, but if he knocked out Jairzinho, then you'd be like, oh, he's back. But to decision Jairzinho, you know what the decision was? Sergey Pavlovich to win by decision was plus 1,100. But he's back, I guess, right? He's in the win column. But he was patient. That's what he needed to do. Ultimately, yes, this sport is entertainment. And going out there and being fun and being exciting matters very much. That's how you get bonuses. That's how you build fan base. But there's also a balance there because you can't be going on 3-fight skids and expecting to just keep your job forever. So I totally understand Sergey Pavlovich taking his time, keeping things controlled, not chasing, I just need to get a win. He also shot a takedown. His first ever takedown in the UFC happened in this fight. Not a very exciting fight. You could have gotten up, taken a shit, watched some wallpaper dry, come back, and been literally the exact same amount of entertained. So it is what it is. That's what happens. There was 3 heavyweight fights on this card, and that's kind of what happens. Then we had the co-main event of the evening. Jacob's underdog lock of the week. Big Ange picked MVP as well. Another fight where I picked an underdog that won and didn't bet plus 3.5 where I should have, but I didn't even need it because Michael Venom Page won this fight outright. Jacob's analysis and my analysis were exactly the same on this fight. Shara Magomedov is not who people think he is. If you run through his UFC history, he barely got by Antonio Tricoli, who sucks, and that was on short notice. He was losing to Armen Petrosyan, and then he had that spectacular double back fist knockout that tricked people into thinking that Shara's that guy. He struggled with Bruno Silva. Shara Magomedov is good. I'm not trying to pretend he sucks, but I was 100% positive. A guy that does not have huge one-punch knockout power and a guy that relies on 90% kicks isn't going to have that success against Michael Venom Page. I thought this was a clear 30-27 across the board. The only argument you could have made is Shara had a tiny bit of a rally with like a minute left in the third. Maybe you want to give him that round because he's at home. I was worried about the judges, but I mentioned earlier, I thought the results were spot on. I don't think a single person got robbed on this card. I think Michael Venom Page looked good. He was at 185 pounds. He did not look slow. He didn't look soft. He looked good. He had that ridiculous long karate style that's crazy to watch, and he did exactly what Michael Venom Page does. He waits, explodes. Waits, explodes. He got it done. The coolest part about it were the MVP chants. These are MVP chants in Saudi Arabia fighting a guy with Ov in his last name. I thought that was spectacular. Good for MVP. The commentating team kept talking about Shara's aura, his aura. First of all, I know aura is a young, cool kid term, so let me just play along, pretend I'm young and cool. But I think Michael Venom Page has the aura. His walkout, that guy, he walks out, you're just smiling, ready to go, like, yes. And especially considering he's not that exciting of a fighter. He's got, like, bursts of excitement, but you're still like, MVP, baby, let's go. So I thought he looked great. There's nothing else I expected from this fight. That's how Michael Venom Page fights. Shara struggled with finding him, struggled with getting out of the way. I will say Shara's got a chin on him because MVP came in fast and hard a few times and blasted that dude dead on the chin. Nothing. Shara didn't even, he fell down a few times, but I think he fell down literally from the force pushing him to the ground, not because his brains were rattled. Shara's got an absolute chin on him. Shara's going to beat a lot of people, but these technical, fast, high movement strikers are going to give Shara a ton of problems every single time. Congrats, Jakey boy, back in the win column for lock of the week. Show him some freaking love. Show him some freaking love. Poor kid getting attacked left and right because a free underdog pick lost. And now one wins, and that video will get 9 comments instead of the 200 when it loses. Take care of my boy. Main event of the evening, Imavov knocked out Israel Adesanya, and it was unfortunate. It was great for Bet Sam. Bet Sam had bets on Nasruddin. Bet Sam came on the show Tuesday and said Nasruddin was going to win and all this. And yes, Nasruddin won. But let's rewound a wind. And when I said rewound a wind, I meant to say let's rewind a round because Izzy won that first round. Izzy looked great in the first round. Leg kicks were there. Takedown defense was there. We had Nasruddin Imavov coming forward, trying to shoot takedowns, coming forward, trying to hug Izzy, trying to drag Izzy to the ground, all of that. And it didn't work because Izzy's takedown defense looked absolutely incredible. He was able to defend the takedowns, able to get off the cage. And then he was piecing up Nasruddin Imavov from range. So Nasruddin lost that first round. Couldn't get the wrestling going, was getting outstruck, his leg was getting chopped up. And then the second round, found some very big power. First round, he had a nice uppercut that backed Izzy up against the cage, but Izzy bit down, kept going, same way he knocked out Alex Pereira. Second round, Nasruddin just fires a huge right, not quite an overhand, not quite a straight, somewhere in between, drops Izzy. Then he pounces Izzy's face first down, just face down, and Nasruddin's just teeing off. For some reason, people felt like that was an early stoppage. I don't think that was You have a guy that was just dropped, face down, not scrambling, not trying to get back up, just face down, getting wailed on. I thought that stoppage was perfectly fine. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a former champion, let it go a touch longer? That's okay. Do that. But I don't think anything was a change. I'm perfectly fine with that. So now the question becomes, is Izzy washed? And it's so hard to say because he looked good. He looked good in the Dricus fight too, up until he was submitted. He looked good until he was dropped. The very first thing that goes when you are too old for this sport is your chin. The next thing that goes is your speed. The last thing that goes is power. Izzy was never a power guy. So now he's a striker who doesn't have the chin anymore, and he's about to lose his speed. I don't know how many more wins Izzy's going to be able to get. And the UFC is not going to do him any favors. Look how they let Anderson Silva ride off into the sunset. They didn't. Look how Chuck Liddell went down. He didn't ride off into the sunset either. Very, very few people get to ride off into the sunset. I think Israel Adesanya needs to sit with the UFC. I think they need to give him a goodbye fight. He can certainly still compete at this level, and he was competing in this fight, but he's made a ton of money. He has his legacy. Don't go out on a 5-fight. Don't Tony Ferguson the end of your career. Don't do it. Give him somebody that he can probably beat. Somebody about his age. Give him that fight. A fun fight. Honestly, Chris Weidman already retired. Should do him versus Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman just retired. Fine. Give him Brad Tavares. Give him somebody he should be able to beat. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Don't try to build a young 185-pounder off of Izzy's legacy. Give him somebody that he can beat. Let him ride off in the sunset, because I know a lot of people don't like Izzy. He's a little cringy. He does seem to be, ever since he lost the belt, getting more and more normal. But let's not forget, when Izzy was champ, he was defending that belt 3 times a year. And as a fan of this sport, we should appreciate the active champions, because we have seen many a champion that defend their belt once a year if you're lucky. So sorry that this is the end of Izzy's career, but that's just how this fight came. This is not a graceful sport to work your way out of. Nasruddin Imavov obviously got the win. I don't know how good he is. He looked good when he got the drop, the huge uppercut in the first round, and obviously the overhand right in the second. But other than that, he was losing this fight. He was getting out-techniqued in the wrestling. He was getting out-techniqued in the striking. So I don't know how good Imavov actually is. So we'll find out in his next fight. Guys, that's the breakdown. Before you leave here, download the freaking app. We have an app. We spent a ton of money to get an app, but the app is free to you. Go to your app store, search We Want Picks, download the damn app, turn on notifications, because the app, the biggest thing in the app is, yes, everything in premium works there, but you're also going to get push notifications. Turn them on so when we place bets, we place picks, we do things, that'll go right to your phone. Inside the app, you will have access to everything we do, including the Fight Simulator. The Fight Simulator is the latest addition to premium. I have a full tutorial on it. But yeah, we have this $10 a month service. But this $10 a month service isn't just a list of 5 picks, a list of 5 bets. Guys, sign up for my Patreon. I have 4 bets on there. No, it's a full-blown service that has tools, insight, information. We have 5 different, I'm going to say people, one of them's a robot, 5 different people picking fights. Then we have the round line leans. Then we have the confidence plays. Then we have DraftKings, FanDuel, Prize Picks, Underdog. The suite of stuff is nuts. And then we continue to invest money to add things to premium to continue to make it the greatest platform in this space. I want to separate myself as far as possible from every dork that went to patreon.com and made one, because we're over here building the best service on planet Earth. The latest edition is the Fight Simulator. We literally coded this from scratch. It uses all the data you could ever have for a fighter. Their height, their reach, significant strikes landed, absorbed, takedown, all the stats from every fight they've ever had. Then the implied probability from the odds. And then it simulates the fight 100,000 times and it spits the results out. And then you can build DraftKings fantasy lineups right from that, find your props, do all the things. Fight simulators included. I'm not touching the $10. If you were a premium member last week, you had the greatest value in this space. This week, you have the greatest value in this space plus the fight simulator, and nothing changed with your account. Data analyzers in there as well. All those data points I mentioned are in here, including full tape study. And it's not just me yelling and screaming. This wacko screaming like this had a phenomenal, not only UFC 311 card, he had a phenomenal UFC Saudi Arabia card. Artem's picking fights at spectacular accuracy. The artificial intelligence is picking fights at spectacular accuracy. We want picks.com. Click become a member. It's freaking $10. It's $10. It's $10. Before you angry type some God knows what nonsense, it's $10. And also, some weirdo on Twitter was like, Angelo's, you could tell his insecurities because of the way he talks to Sam and Artem. What a fucking dweeb that guy is. Do you not have friends? Do you not bust your friends' balls? You absolute clown shoe dork. We want picks.com. Click become a member at the top.